Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spotlight on CS Ops. I'm here with my partner, Matthew Lind, over in Austin, Texas.
Hello, Sean. Great to see you.
Great to see you as well. And today we have the wonderful pleasure of speaking with Dylan Joyce. Dylan is also, we've got two Austinites here today, so we've got lots of representation from that side of the world. Um, so Dylan comes to us. He currently works in CS Ops at Glia, and previously was a management consultant, an MBA as well. It's great to have two MBAs in the room today. So pleasure to have you here today, Dylan.
Yeah. No, thanks to both of you. Really, really excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I can't believe how many guests we've had that has their MBA, and then I'm reminded once again that I do not have my MBA. I look like I do, but I don't have an
Yeah, you look like you're the
MBA.
one with the most degrees. You look like you're a
All
pure
right,
Matthew.
yeah, fair enough. Fair
You
enough.
look like you could be
Dylan, tell
teaching
us.
teaching one of our classes there at the MBA, but I'll say we could do a
Sometimes
whole other
clothes make
podcast
the
on
man,
that.
right? Yeah, yeah. Dylan, tell us about your journey. I mean, you have a fascinating journey that takes you through management consulting and
Yeah.
now into CS ops, rev ops, go to market ops. How do you define it, and how did you get there?
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'll start. So, yeah, in Austin, Texas, Dylan Joyce, as I said, in Austin, Texas right now, but born and raised in the Northeast, South Orange, New Jersey. I actually started in software and go to market in software directly from college. I joined a software company as part of their leadership development program, which transitioned into what we called consulting there, which I would equate most closely to like traditional customer success at that company. I did spend some time on the new business sales team as well at that company. So checked a couple boxes, if you will, across go to market. Um, then moved down to Austin, gosh, 8 years ago to get my MBA at UT. Thought it was going to be a temporary stop. We're still here 8 years later. So obviously we liked it a good deal.
Too nice.
And yeah, yeah, my wife jokes, ribs me on that a little bit, sometimes about our temporary stay that is not so much
Yeah,
anymore.
you in about 10% of Austin, so it's just
Yeah.
fine.
Well,
It's just fine.
I like to say, we were a little before some of the influx, so I still get to complain about all the people moving in, even though I'm totally one of the problems there as well. Um, but then, yeah, from business school, I did join Bain and Company, doing strategy consulting. And you're going to see a common theme here. A lot of the work that I was, gravitated toward was within go-to-market, and with our technology clients. And so after, almost 4 years there, we were starting a family, wanted to get off the road a little bit. Obviously, there were different priorities at the time as I was growing up with my wife, and that's when Glia came along, which is where I am now. And it felt like the perfect opportunity to build off of one, the go-to-market experience, right? And but to go in-house to a company where I could still be solving a lot of our most important problems, working on the strategy side, working on the ops side, within our RevOps function. And it's been exactly that over these past 2+ years now. I had our post sales operations function. I also had our go to market strategy and analytics. So there's a mouthful there that I could probably work on in terms of a title, but it's been an awesome ride. Really appreciated it.
So curious, like you mentioned, go to market there. What kind of led you to like? What was the most exciting part about kind of, or what attracted you the most, I guess, about getting into go to market? Was it around driving things for customers, or the workflows and kind of process improvement, or what sort of attracted you there?
Yeah, for sure. I think the customer piece was definitely always huge for me. I mean, even from day one, right? I think with all these roles, the common thread is you're taking whatever product or platform that your company has, and you are helping it solve the problems of your customers or partners, right? And I think I've gotten a lot of energy out of that, from day one in my career. Now, obviously, now that looks a little different than when I was, on the front lines with customers. Now, in many ways, my clients are our go-to-market teams, right? And so it's enabling them and working with them to be that much better at what they do. But the theme, I think, of that partnering and being that advisor to customers has never left and always given me a lot of energy.
I love that. I love the folks who have walked in the shoes of those they serve. So you are battle tested, perhaps. Um, I hear this theme often. People will say, I've been a CSM or I've been whatever, and I'm kind of ready to be off of that beat. I'm kind of tired of the 10 p.m. escalations or getting chewed out, um, being in the line of fire. I'm gravitating towards ops, and you actually made one of those transitions. So what would you say to someone if they came to you and said, "Yeah, Dylan, I love this space, but I want to move more towards ops, or I love mashing the data." What's your advice to people like that?
Yeah. Oh, I would say though, and I think this is probably a common theme across RevOps, right? And across especially RevOps at growth stage companies is um, this is definitely not a clock in, clock out job where what I get the most energy from is there is like we reserve the right and our leaders have reserved the right to place us against the strategic and operational problems that are most important to our company at that point. And so, shocker, with this stage of company, that list is never zero, right? Until for what you're working on. So it is definitely a grind, and it's been an incredible learning experience. I think for me, what I would tell people is like is the last thing I just said in terms of learning experience, right? Like one thing that when you take yourself away from the front line and you're more in a strategy and ops role, like it does allow you to touch so many more facets of the business, both in a CS role, but also maybe even a little bit outside of that in terms of the interactions with other elements of the go-to-market organizations. So I think that has just allowed me to legitimately feel like I'm learning every single day on this job. And for someone who is in that stage of their career where they really want to tap into that and they want to learn and they want to grow both in their professional skills, but also their professional acumen, it'd be hard pressed to find better opportunities to do that.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. There's so much work to be done in CS ops, so that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Is is there any like as you string along your career, like when you went from school to management consultant to now this, like, is there any practices that you kind of continuously reuse? Like, I don't know, I'm thinking about like, business school was all about business cases and, here's a scenario, go figure out how to solve that. I imagine management consultant is a lot of the same thing. Here's a scenario, figure out how you solve it. Like, are there skills that you've learned along the way there that you think directly apply to CS and for other practitioners that are in CS ops?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think the a with this role, it is very rare that you are going to be packaged a very clean problem with, everything fully defined and your job is to just execute, right? Like that's not usually the
Never
case.
seen
The
it.
joke, the exaggerated joke, right, is like, oh, if this is tough, RevOps will figure it out, right? And I know that's exaggerated, but I think there's reality is we're dealing with a lot of ambiguity where you can diagnose the problem, but that's kind of where we're starting. And so I think some of the things that I felt like I've continued to lean into is taking a hypothesis driven approach, understanding my key problems and building hypotheses for what we feel like the solutions could be, and that then allows me to be a little more targeted in terms of what that's a process improvement or taking a more like longer term strategic analysis. It allows me to be a little more targeted and effective in terms of chasing that execution. I also think that uh, in consulting, surely, and absolutely here. Um, if you take the approach of like, I need to build this, I need to solve this myself, you're doing everyone a disservice, right? I'm not saying that we don't have, we like to lean on big brains and we take pride in our own expertise, but like whether it is clients in consulting or now my counterparts across our go-to-market orgs, like you have so much experience that you should tap into in terms of how you should make a new process change most effective, or what their signals they're seeing from the field that could affect your analysis. So that would be a big thing for me is like take the feedback, always ask for feedback, use that to codify what you're bringing together. If you try to do stuff on an island, it's just you're not going to create the most thoughtful and executable solution, whether that is analysis or a new process change.
Yeah, takes a village.
Yeah.
Takes a village. Do you have a framework that you wrote down? I mean, I'm imagining in my mind that your experience at Bain or otherwise has given you a bunch of arrows in your quiver to pull out when needed. But do you have some frameworks that you use as far as intake or how you kind of work through getting from a hypothesis to a proposed solution?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wouldn't say that I necessarily lean on like a call it like a standard or generic framework, if you will. I think the biggest thing always though, I'll just harp on it again, is being crystal clear on the problems or the questions that you are addressing up front. And there may be many stakeholders that have different answers to that as you're starting something. If you're not crystal clear on exactly what the aligned vision is, you're probably in for a world of hurt later on. So I would just really go back to that, where for me that is absolutely first and foremost. From there, after you have time to do your own diligence and kind of initial brainstorming, I would also then just recommend an earlier than comfortable realignment with other folks involved in owning this process so that you can, like, your initial thinking on those initial hypotheses can be tested once before you actually press go. So, Matt, to boil that up, I would say it's the overinvestment up front on clarity of problem and our initial thinking for what to drive next. You really see people a lot. What's funny about this is I come from the world of consulting where there were kind of two archetypes of projects, right? Where you would have these very, very long engagements where it was like no stone was unturned. And when you're on a consulting engagement for 4 months and a highly priced professional services engagement, everything is touched, and you are so deep and so broad. But there were also, I worked for a while in our private equity group where we were talking about 2 to 3 week diligences, right? Where you have to get smart so quickly on things and really take that two week approach. Those are both ends of the spectrum. For the most part, our work that we do here is always somewhere in the middle, right? So you really need to balance that speed with depth at all times and understand where you need to spike depending on the type of project that you're working on. And I see a lot of people, including myself sometimes, trip up there, whether that is moving too slow and being too cautious and trying to go too deep to the point where we kind of get outrun by the problem, or the flip side where you just feel like you gotta have a solution right now, and what you put in place is not actually moving the needle in any way.
Any like any I don't know, example. I was going to say examples, but maybe not examples of where you're currently working, but any thoughts, like, can you frame that out, like, as a, like, pull an example out of your hat and
Yeah.
see, like, can you give us an idea of, like, or the audience, like, what you mean by that? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
too
So
big, too
I
small.
think one example, right, is like a lot of what something we're thinking about a lot right now is improving our visibility into renewal risk and our signals that help us get smarter on renewal risk, right? And I think um, in the if we were to when we initially started looking at this problem, it was truly the idea in some cases, like we don't have any visibility into the key risk factors of this specific contract coming up, right? And so if I were just really trying to solve that quickly, I would roll out a list of, potential risk options and say, okay, like, all right, CSMs, let's start really now working with this list, and we're going to take all of our signals from that. Sure, that gets us something quickly, but I wouldn't argue that necessarily moves the needle in any way for how we want to think about true signaling down the road. The flip side of this is if I spend 1 year building out the most automated AI-driven model that now allows us to feel like we have a better sense of a contract's 2, 3 years down the road. Yeah, sure, like that is eventually great, but I've now lost a full year of making any progress on that interim signaling, and maybe I've even missed some steps along the way that could have been that much more incremental without the wait, right? So that's just one of the examples where you have to kind of find that middle ground for like a critical problem that I know a lot of CS organizations are facing right now.
And I find as well, like sometimes I think we often start that conversation with like, just let's put all the signals or let's put all the data points in one bucket and then we'll
Yeah.
see what correlations come out of it to tell us where there might be risk, as opposed to maybe working backwards and saying, okay, well, we've seen in the last 6 months, hey, these are some of the reasons why customers have left. Can we identify that in the data that shows us like a advanced signal on maybe that activity happening? And I find like sometimes getting really honed in on that like just that question of like, hey, there's this type of event that could signal versus, let's just see all the correlation. Like,
Yeah.
because sometimes that just creates like such a longer adventure and
Yeah.
really like, who cares if there's a correlation between weather and risk renewal, like renewal
Right.
risk. Sorry, it's not as helpful, but
Mhm. No, I completely agree. I completely agree.
Dylan, you've got go to market strategy and analytics. Which I love that mouthful, by the way. But this includes sales, success, marketing. What do you have under your umbrella? And the reason I'm asking is like, what compare and contrast the types of services you produce, if they're different at all for those different groups.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would say, and the way that that I've loved the way that our revenue operations teams functions here is that we do make sure that we have alignment to each of those core go-to-market organizations. So I have counterparts that are directly aligned to sales, directly aligned to marketing, and I'm aligned to post sales in terms of strategy and ops support for those organizations. The go-to-market strategy and analytics is a function that kind of that does span the width of that entire group, right? So I would say we are less dedicated to each of those specific organizations. But if you think about reviewing how our segments are doing on all the key from pipeline generation through sales execution and obviously renewal execution. Like we are bringing together all those metrics that are more broader segment health and broader go-to-market health for the entire org on a whole versus post sales where we're going very, very deep on renewals and renewal strategy. Sales is going very, very deep on opportunity management, progression, et cetera. Marketing is going very, very deep on funnel analytics and stuff like that.
makes sense. I like that you guys are blending those things together and not really necessarily thinking of them as separate books. It seems like they're separate pages in a chapter, but they're not separate chapters or separate books. So I like how
Yeah, and
you're thinking about it.
I'm totally with you. And I think also there um, and this is probably a good learning coming into the role as well. RevOps doesn't mean one thing. Like we all know a RevOps team can mean eight different things depending on the org. Honestly, kind of like CS can mean eight different things depending on the org, right? Um, which is a beauty of the course, beauty and a curse of the function. I think with the RevOps team, a high functioning RevOps team, you need to know where you spike and you need to make sure that you have a great complement of skills on the strategy side and more of the ops and system side, right? And if your team can do that, even if it doesn't fit cookie cutter into each organization or each specific person, I think you have the chance to really, really work very, very well together. And Danny, who runs our group, I give him a lot of credit because I think he's created a lot of that. Now, I would say, I know I joke with my team, right? Like that does mean you need to know your weaknesses. Like every time we look at a new system, I am so crystal clear with all the folks that we're talking to. Like, if you're considering me an admin resource, a high functioning systems guy, you are wrong, right? Like that is not where I spike. We have rock stars on our team that are incredible there, but that is not an area where I'm gonna shine. I know where I'll need to overinvest, right, in order to be good enough in some areas, and ops and systems is always going to be a part of what we do, right? But you got to know that balance.
Yeah, self-awareness is so key here. And I love that you're aware of it. You clearly are talking to your team and making them aware of it, or at least asking them to be aware of it. So that's awesome. Give us a prediction, Dylan. Give us a prediction. I'd like to say it should be about CS ops, but I'm almost tempted to be like any prediction at all, any space.
Okay.
It can be about UT or the
Oh,
growth of Austin,
UT.
but just anything at all. Give us a prediction.
Yeah, UT, we're looking forward to August 31st this year for football. So I'll leave it at that. But no, yeah, in terms of um oh man. I mean, I guess I could go the cop out route a little bit with RevOps as a whole, right? And I'll bring it back to AI. Um I think I've had I've had an interesting number of people kind of ask me over the last year if I'm nervous about AI in any way in terms of what that means for our roles. And it's really funny because I feel like the exact opposite, where I have strong conviction that AI is going to massively evolve not only our functions, but the organizations we support. But I also think that we're like RevOps teams are best positioned to now harness and really supercharge that, right? So so my prediction there is what we'll see over the next couple of years is AI certainly um, disrupt or improve the efficiencies that we individually can work with, right? And how we work. But you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you aren't extremely focused on the ways it can make your team, your CS ops, or excuse me, your CS teams more efficient, and you can harness a lot of that knowledge for better signaling, et cetera, with a lot of the stuff that we mentioned even earlier in this call. So that would be my big thing, right? And I think the RevOps team can not only be a champion of that technology and use it extremely effectively, but also then we can become the power users and experts of how others are using it as well. And I think that actually sets us up to be in a really, really great position and become even more invaluable to the org.
Are there specific use cases or outcomes like you're particularly excited about? Like, is it content generation or um,
Yeah.
analytics or?
For me, I think the few that I've seen that I'm most excited with. I mean, the funny thing with the analytics piece is I call myself the dinosaur where I will need to learn more than many to like take my fingers off the keys when it comes to actually executing analysis. One of our analysts is more AI forward in that area, and she's giving me some good learnings, right? Because it's super powerful stuff if you use it correctly. But I'll go the things I think that the efficiency pieces, like they're gonna make a big difference when you talk about, meeting recaps or writing emails and stuff like that. But that doesn't really necessarily blow my mind. I think um, stuff that we're starting to do in terms of like in terms of AI being a coach for CSMs in terms of running playbooks, right? Like expansion playbooks or renewal playbooks, stuff like that. Like that to me is way more exciting overall, where it's we are creating a lot of this good thought leadership with leaders across our organization with our team. One of the best ways to reinforce that is through some of these functions where they can actually interact and use that technology to be that coach when, a Dylan can't hop on a call 5 times a day. A CS leader cannot hop on a call 5 times a day. That to me is like, wow, there's a lot there.
The that notion of like a proactive coach that tells you, hey, you're going to the left a little too much or whatever, going to the right a little too much. Like, I'm curious like how that plays out like customer facing as well. Cause I think that like, today we were just doing proactive messages that are pre-configured, pre-coded or hard-coded to like specific, data points. But if there's a way to get the AI to actually like assist and be kind of the bot walking alongside of you and helping to make sure that you get up the hill in the
Yeah.
right way or the most efficient way is super promising. I can't wait for something to happen like that because so far I see a lot like what you're just describing earlier. The things that are not that exciting is like it's content generation. It's going to tell me that, hey, adoption is low here, so maybe there's a risk or whatnot. But is that really intelligence? Like, I don't know. Arguably,
I
maybe.
mean, it's great, don't get me wrong, right? Like that is and that is like the easy low-hanging fruit. Easy is the wrong word, but it's the low-hanging fruit where like you're 100% going to see, we've already seen efficiency gains in many of those areas, right?
Yeah.
You can't discount that. But in terms of like blowing my mind and stuff where it's like, wow, this is going to take us to the next level. I love what you just said though about some of the customer facing pieces. Obviously, we certainly know acceptance and excitement around this technology varies depending on
Yeah.
organizations, no doubt. But like I think about how a lot of CS teams are bogged down with some of the more routine questions and asks from customers, right? And it's a great part of relationship management, don't get me wrong, but there are only so many hours in the day. So if you had, as you were saying, even some very exciting and capable middle layer to help
Hmm.
the customer along with some of those questions, they don't just want to wait for a support ticket to come back or stuff like that. It'd be massive.
Yeah.
I wonder too if there's space for the CSM bot, and I'm not to replace the CSM, but to got the CSM coach
Yeah.
um, for the same reasons of like, well, they don't always want to have to go escalate to a manager who's, by the way, got 7 or 8 people reporting to them, and is on PTO this week. But it's like, okay, the customer just uh, gave me notice to cancel. What
Yeah.
shall I do? And I know there's usually a rule-based playbook for that, but then could there be something inside your org that's trained on your org's data and your org's behavior that says, here's the great things to do. And now, okay, CSM can go get started on these things and then go, raise the flags. But so
And then take it to the second and third level, right? Because like I do think when you're talking about optimizing on a platform, when you're talking about people trusting their like counterparts at these vendors to expand and grow their relationships and bring on new products and commit investment to that. When you talk about just in general, like executive advisory, right? Like I don't think like to me, there is always going to be, or for an incredible amount of time, there's always going to be that need. But if we can have our CS group razor focused on that type of high value interaction and engagement and advisory, like that's huge.
Yeah. We're, you know, watch out, don't blink too long because we might be there pretty quickly, right? Like the speed of development and the technology change. I mean, we would have never, no, none of us would have ever thought this would ever be possible like 2, 3 years ago. But here we are with ChatGPT and DeepSeek and I don't know, so many other things happening. So
It is
exciting
crazy.
times. As we just sort of get nearing the end here, one last kind of final question is, and I remember meeting you maybe a few years ago and you asking me this kind of stuff. when you were first getting into CS ops. But curious if there's anything that you've learned along the way that you think the next, generation or folks that are just getting started would maybe appreciate. Is there any tips that you'd share?
Yes. I mean, feel like we could I feel like we could go on for a while on this one. Let's see. I mean, I talked about the know where you spike, right? I think that is super important. I talked about you're not alone. And so like operating on an island and not getting feedback is to me not the answer. Um, I talked about the balance of speed and thoroughness, which I think is really important. I mean, I I don't know if this is going to be too generic, guys, but I think like we are a good at RevOps team, right, is known as they're known as great executors. And so, I mean, it serves you in every single role, but being very action oriented and being someone that is going to be very willing to go out and grab that new ambiguous, dicey problem that no one really wants to solve because it's a little bit scary. Like that it's a scary prospect, but like that is how we become so invaluable in this organization, right? As the people that are continuously willing to do that overall. So if you want to, that's something you have to be comfortable and excited about if you really want to excel in this role. But I think if you do, if you take those risks, it's so fulfilling in terms of making this just that supercharged learning experience that anyone from right out of school to, I'm over a decade into my professional career and I still feel like I'm get that learning energy every single day. Now, the caveat with that is a little bit what I mentioned before in terms of prioritization. Um, the list is never ending in terms of what we can do. Um, if you are not if you are not prioritizing well, and if you are letting ad hoc requests because they're more straightforward or because they feel like they're from someone that you really like, dominate your day, um, you're putting yourself in a really tough position overall. And I think you're kind of not minimizing, but you're a headwind to the true effectiveness of you and of your organization.
Mhm.
That's a big thing. I mean, it goes back to what we just talked about CSMs, the highest value activities for CSMs that are moving the needle. It has to be the same thing with our function overall. I can spin up the very pretty analysis and get some instant gratification by getting that to a stakeholder that is then wowed or very excited. But did I need to do that at, 5 p.m. on a Tuesday? Or could there have been a better use of my time?
Right. Love it.
Yeah, I love that. This, yeah, somebody described your inbox as the to-do list that a whole bunch of other people prioritized for you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah, there's some wisdom in
exactly.
there.
Exactly. But you like what I appreciate, and again, it's one of the reasons why I love this place and why I came here in the first place was our leaders. I love working with our leaders. Our leaders, I think we've built a situation where that accountability and that two-way street in terms of understanding what matters most is it's very natural. I know that's not every place. That hasn't been every place that I've been, right? And so, but emphasizing and making sure that you can build that up as you're building out your RevOps function, I think is super critical to a great experience.
Yep.
Very good.
Second. Dylan, it's been awesome to have you. It's been awesome to meet you. In spite
Yeah.
of the fact that we figured out 6 or 7 miles apart.
Yeah.
So let's go get margaritas sometime. John, you're invited.
I would love
Uh,
to fly on down. No,
I'll
but
be right down. Yeah.
no, hey guys, I appreciate this conversation. I look forward to following along as you continue this series. I think it's I didn't directly say it in our conversation, but when it says you're not alone, this is another way that you're not alone, right? Like both to understand that people are dealing with the same frustrations and problems that you're dealing with, but also that people have great tips across this industry for how you can get better at what you do. So appreciate you guys doing this and for having me on. I look forward, as I said, to learning more and drinking some margaritas in bow ties in a few weeks, hopefully.
Margaritas and bow ties.
Jealous,
That's
guys.
another podcast waiting to happen.
All
All
right. Well,
right.
thanks for joining us, Dylan.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one.